David Isbister is a Vancouver-based organizer with No More Dead Captives. He's here today to tell us about concerns that have been raised about a female moose who's being photographed at the Greater Vancouver Zoo looking quite emaciated. Why is there a moose in Vancouver, David?
Well, we're we're not sure. There's a moose in Vancouver because I guess it lends itself well to the Pacific Northwest or Western Canadian display that they have there.
So where is this Vancouver Zoo? I'm not even sure I knew it existed.
Oh yeah, you might remember it as being called the Vancouver Game Farm from in the 80s and 90s. It's in Aldergrove in the Langley Township, so it's pretty far out actually. It's situated on a piece of agricultural land reserve land that has somehow managed to continue to get permission to develop that land.
So it's privately owned
Hmm.
enterprise on kind of ALR registered land. Okay.
That's right. Yeah.
And so they have different zones of animals in with.
Well, I obviously I'm not allowed in there. I'm fairly recognizable and ultimately have would be escorted out. But when we send people in there, yeah, they have it sort of arranged in big chain link enclosures for, say, wild seeming cats or felines that would originally come from Africa. They have hippo enclosure. They have reptile houses, kind of like a classic zoo, except much more dilapidated and still just as cruel.
Yeah, and so it sounds like this particular moose, is it just one moose then that's not looking very healthy? Or
Yeah, well, that we can see, some of the enclosures are, I don't want to use the word larger as if to suggest that they're an adequate size, but some of them have opportunities for the animals to hide from view and whatnot. So this moose was spotted by someone who posted about it on Facebook. This was actually someone who keeps horses, I guess, and was sort of comparing the body condition of the moose that they saw to the horses that they keep, and noticed that the moose was emaciated. They took a picture and posted it, and it drew a bit of outrage.
and so who I mean, I'm understandably the animal community is outraged. Is any media picked up on this or government officials?
Yesterday I sent out a presser just to draw attention to this post on Facebook and some of the conditions of that were documented via these couple of pictures by Shannon Marcoux is the person's name, and I got some permission to use those pictures as well. But yeah, that's how she was. That's how she was documented. We're not sure exactly what's going on. They said that the median age of a moose, their life expectancy is 8 years. A quick Google search shows that it's actually 15 to 25. But this is a common tactic that they use anyway, as they use the lowest possible captive lifespan to make it seem like they're keeping animals alive longer. So it was reported on so far by the province. And yesterday, in just a short story where they put my concerns and other people's concerns first, and then just responded at the end of the article, like the vast majority of the article, sort of just to say that it had been addressed and the zoo was aware of it.
Okay. Well, it sounds like there's a bit of a history of many concerns that have been raised about this place over the years. You sent a link to a Zoo Check report from June of last year. Do you want to speak about some of the other concerns that were raised in that report?
Sure. Yeah, they're ongoing. The Zoo Check report has actually been issued in 1997, in 2003, with a follow-up in 2006 and 2009, and now a new report in 2019. They all are commissioned in part with the Vancouver Humane Society, who has had also, an ongoing record of critiquing the zoo's poor drainage, dilapidated enclosures, lack of enrichment, improperly cared for property, and their focus on putting money generating items such as trains and concessions in ahead of completing vital repairs to the environments of these captives.
Hmm. That's a big gap from 2009 to 2019, eh? Yeah, and so is the SPCA or the Humane Society there on this particular moose situation?
Yesterday, as of yesterday, when it went to press, we have only had confirmation that the SPCA is aware. There's no word as to whether or not they're scheduling a visit or taking any other action. But zoos are self-regulated through CAZA, so the same as the aquariums and other zoos of Canada. CAZA stands for the Canada's Accredited Zoos and Aquariums, and they basically act as a self-regulator, which makes it, and self-accreditor, which makes it difficult for other regulatory bodies or law enforcement around animal cruelty laws, in brackets, laws which are already quite weak as it is, to be enforced. So the SPCA usually only responds to flagrant, egregious, obvious things there, such as when Hazina the hippo, when she was a baby, her enclosure didn't include proper water, like a proper a pool, because hippos rely on buoyancy to offset pressure on their joints. So she was growing bigger and bigger and bigger. And they built her a pool approximately 3 years late. And it was only after they drew an animal cruelty charge that they finished that enclosure. So even though in the past they've drawn animal cruelty charges in various investigations, CAZA has managed to step that back and hold that off, and then take the minimal amount of action to evade, sort of detrimental actions from them from outside law enforcement.
Hmm. So are they're actually breeding hippos and other animals in this place?
Well, they participate in purpose breeding. So, for instance, they had a pair of red pandas that were bred at the Assiniboine Zoo. Sadly, one of those pandas died 6 weeks after arriving from an infection because of stress. But so they are definitely involved with it, and they don't discourage breeding on a number of their animals that they hold there. In fact, zoos and aquariums always take the position that breeding is a sign of natural behavior, and it's a sign of health, so to speak. I suppose so. They I guess that sort of enables themselves to have the rhetoric or the narrative in place that if these animals are breeding, they're healthy, which we know is not the case. It really only takes, in the case of, say, cetaceans, one dominant male who chases all the females around, or in the case of zoo animals and the like, insemination at another facility and then subsequent sales of that animal to other locations. So
Right. Yeah.
they don't actively that we know of, breed big cats there, but that is because zoos generally contract people outside of the zoo environment now to do that, in either through, someone like Joe Exotic, who we know from Netflix infamy, who supplies a number of cats, or had supplied a number of cats all around North America, to other zoological science centers that breed animals to prevent what they call total species extinction. So ultimately, that is the main issue, is that they kind of obfuscate their actual intentions and their actions around breeding, and then just say it's a matter of health, or they've rescued this one from a breeder, whatever.
Right. Well, every time one is brought into the world, it's ka-ching, right? It's another bundle of money for somebody. And then when they die, the Vancouver Zoo apparently is not known to provide a lot of information about deaths coming. It's hard to get information about the animal deaths.
Well, yeah, I mean, before, up until 2015, when we began a series of sustained actions, they were announcing deaths via news releases. One, because I think they were busier then and people would notice. And two, because there was less overall consequence. There might have been a news story about it and it would go, away after a little while. But when we started documenting these deaths with the timeline of tragedy that we had attached in that presser that you're referring to, with the other zoo check report and so on, they, for whatever reason, stopped issuing press releases around acquisitions and deaths, and would do sort of late timed blog posts instead.
Hmm. It's interesting that it was originally called a game farm, because game implies something that you hunt.
Mm-hmm.
Hunt, yeah.
Yeah, that was ultimately, it hasn't come far from its history of as one of Canada's barely regulated, absolutely cruel roadside zoos. You know, some of these places are still struggling, but are hanging on. You know, there's like the cat sanctuary in Kelowna, and there's other places that have, you know, a single animal chained in an enclosure that people are paying to look at. This one has managed to grow a little bit over the years, and has managed to become accredited by CAZA. But I mean, that really, as we know from Marineland and Calgary Zoo and Assiniboine and Bowmanville, all these places that have been shut down for abuse and cruelty or have had, you know, numerous problems, we know that accreditation really overall means nothing.
Right.
Certainly not to animals.
Yeah. And so recently you were raising awareness about some of these issues at the aquarium. There was a demo there. How did that go?
Oh, the demo went great. We kept our distance and masked up and did the speak outs and the disruption that we needed to do. The tone there has changed a little bit with management, and you know, it's a little bit less aggressive on the side of staff who used to, you know, there was the odd person there who kind of wanted to intimidate or whatever, and now there's been some dialogue. Who knows what ultimately that means, whether it's just a shift in relations messaging, or if it's an actual shift in culture or shift in actions. I'm not entirely sure, but that's ongoing. There's some more stuff happening behind the scenes on that, and we're all working hard on that as well.
That's great. So if people want to get involved with No More Dead Captives to help with these issues around the aquarium or the zoo, how do they get involved? What do you suggest?
You could take a look through the materials on Liberate GVZoo animals on Facebook. I'd love it if people publicly declared their boycott of GVZoo and CAZA facilities. And if you need help understanding why, gvzoofacts.ca should be coming back up in another couple weeks, I think. So that'll be a good resource. Or if you decide to visit, you can do what a lot of people have done and post YouTube or Facebook posts. YouTube actually has a few videos where the person doesn't even know that they're documenting neuroses and stereotypic behavior and evidence of depression and other issues associated with maladaptivity and captivity in general. So you could just take a look and see the track worn into the ground along the fence line for a lot of the cat enclosures as they pace. You can see cats and other animals pressing their heads into fence posts and doing other, that's called logging, doing other types of stereotype behaviors, like pacing and twitching, repetitive movements. You know, these are easy. If you really do feel you have to go there and visit, why not visit to educate yourself about what animals really need? That said, we prefer you boycott and just and do your research out and about. But if you are going there and you don't yet believe us, feel free to bring along some video and camera equipment, because they encourage you to do that and document it, and you'll see it. Certainly, if you look just a little bit past the superficial, you know, sort of grade school Google notes that they provide for facts on animals, there you'll see it. And then you could go a little bit farther if you like. You could speak to Tourism BC, who supports them, and some of their sponsors like Otter Co-op, TELUS, Shell, places like that. Oh,
Yeah.
and maybe even speak to the township of Langley as well.
Okay, so because they can't exist if they don't have permission to be there, I guess, eh?
Correct. Though that part of its dismantling would be a larger ongoing challenge, just because, you know, right now they're in the midst of an enormous expansion, and they've
Oh,
received approval on that sort of side of things. So yeah.
what's the expansion about? What do they want to expand?
Oh, I'd be delighted to tell you. So the expansion, first, I'll have to preface this with, in the past, they've drowned 3 hippos at once. They've had 3 deaths of giraffes in 1 month, 2 of them in 1 week. They've had various other African animals die prematurely, achieving barely 40% of a normal lifespan, while telling people that is a normal lifespan. And now they want to, they're underway, expansion is underway, to the tune of $20 million to make half of the park focused on the African Savannah animals that come from there, like a safari park. They're under new direction. Before, they had a former volunteer that was running the zoo, Jody Henderson, and now they have this sort of more classic charismatic personality type fellow named Serge Lucier. He's a French-Canadian fellow who has had some extensive history in specifically for-profit zoos and building sort of safari and African type parks. So that is the plan, is they're going to expand it in our climate where there's already been a ton of questions about their care. They're going to bite off even more than they can chew, I think. So we'll be working on that as well. So that was a sad recent development.
Yeah, lots going on. Well, thanks to you guys, all of you, No More Dead Captives, all the animal liberation participants in whatever capacity, for doing what we can do. I think that's a great idea of documenting wherever we can, anything that looks unfamiliar in terms of natural behavior. And yeah,
Yeah, it's
thanks.
usually just there if people look a little bit past just what is said. And we hear that a lot. People will say, oh, these are rescues. But if you look deeper, like, actually, as an example, they recently have acquired 3 bear cubs that were orphaned in Alberta. Many experts and other folks feel like it's pretty obvious that these animals could have been rehabilitated in a sanctuary environment and at least have an attempt at re-release. Instead, the Alberta authorities just signed right off on these animals, these individuals going to GVZoo to live out the rest of their life in captivity in an environment that is ultimately for profit. So the moose, the wolves, everything there has a similar story, but we can see from places like Marineland that also keep fallow deer, that also keep wolves and bears, and who also have drawn animal cruelty charges after accreditation in the past, that this is ultimately not a sanctuary. It's still a zoo, just holding local ecology and using it to excuse their other abuses on animals that they participate in purpose breeding and wild catching with.
Right. Well, I think having experienced captivity ourselves, and we have a sense of what that does to our brain, right? The ability to not be able to move around as we naturally would
Sure.
impacts all of us. And so, okay, well, we'll do what we can. Thank you so much again, David, for taking the time today, and hopefully we'll hear from you next time with some good news about something.
Um, I hope so. Yeah. Maybe we can talk about sanctuaries or other things in the future, or other good stories. But yeah, I mean, GVZoo, just a little bit of basic research, and you'll find a whole trove of horrible, tragic events through history. And I know you're trying to wrap up, but
Okay.
even like the raptors, someone recently, there was a bird show happening, and crows mobbed this bird that was flying for a performance, and they chased this bird into the lion enclosure, and the lion ate the bird, or killed the bird,
Mm.
a golden eagle. They've had recently a bear attack a little girl and hurt her arm, but they passed it off as the girl was trespassing in an unauthorized area, and somehow the bear got hold of her. It's always just kind of swept under the rug. And when we've been there in the past, one of their employees actually assaulted a single mother with a leaf blower by pushing it up into her face, into a megaphone, and bashing the megaphone into her lips, causing her to bleed. Just the people that they associate with as well. One of our first protests there in person featured someone I didn't know at the time, making all these like gestures at us and saying, gay slurs and hateful slurs. And we later find out that that's Mike Hopcraft, the former owner of the Reptile Guys Reptile Zoo, which was shut down after a ton of documented cruelty on 42 and more animals being held with 4 broken legs. So this is the type of company they keep. This is the type of folks that zoos it's typically end up with. So all that talk about rescue, they take in the odd person's snake or the odd person's turtle. It still is being used to obfuscate what is obviously happening, which is that they're still purpose breeding at facilities offsite, bringing them in, and then those animals perish for nothing more than our selfish entertainment. It's got to
Uh,
stop.
Right. And if you're not releasing, when you can, re-releasing animals that naturally live in our environment here, that's a good indication that yeah, I often think if there wasn't money associated with these things, would people do this stuff, you know?
But maybe they would for their own egos. I know there's always with all the folks I've I think we've touched on in a past episode that I used to be involved in captivity on the pet side and on the consultation side, building equipment and stuff, like a rain chamber for dart frogs and stuff that I used to do as a baby vegan, thinking like, oh, these people just need to know that they're hurting animals and then they'll change and there's a proper way to do captivity. But there is not. There is no right way to do the wrong thing. And that is why I am on the side of staunch activism now. I still love animals and enjoyed my time keeping them, but it was wrong. And even with the best intentions, the outside influence of money and humans first sort of intentions always sully any good that can be done if it isn't animal led. So that's why our focus as an advocate group is always animal led release, animal led rehabilitation. So if the individual comes to us wanting to live, choosing to live, and we rehabilitate them, then it's up to us to also reintroduce them to their home where we have tried so hard to remove ourselves from nature. They're still sort of an innate, valuable, intrinsic part of it. And so if you're not trying to release, you're definitely not doing rescue.
Right. Yeah. We all gotta want to go about our lives as we want to go about our lives, right? And so I know you have a busy day as well today, and that's a good thing. And so we'll chat again soon.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, David.